Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. So today's video is going to be a little bit different than my previous ones. Instead of breaking down a whole song, I will be focusing on a single subject, so hopefully this can be more educational, like an actual traditional tutorial. So without further ado, let's learn how to write J-Rock guitar parts for beginner guitarists and for non-guitarists. I'm going to start by focusing on real guitars first, and then I'll show you how to do the same with MIDI. But I really advise you to watch the video until the end because a lot of the concepts will also apply to MIDI. I get a lot of comments asking what software or DAW do I use to make music, and most of the time it's Cubase, but this time I'm going to be using Ableton, but it really doesn't matter, you can use FL Studio, Bitwig, Logic Pro, or whatever you want. For the instruments, I will be using my Fender Telecaster, Fender Jazz Bass, Superior Drummer 3, Molovase 2, and Ample Guitar TC, but more on that later. For the tone, I'm going to be using Neural DSP Morgan Amp Suite, Neural DSP Parallax, and a Boss GX100. Quick disclaimer, I am by no means a great guitarist, there are so many people that are way better than me, so take all of this with a grain of salt, but I'll do my best to keep it very beginner friendly and give you a few simple but effective tricks. There are a lot of different ways that you can write guitar parts, and they can be drastically different depending on the composition, the genre of music, and personal preferences. This is going to be a classic two-guitar approach, one guitar playing mostly chords and another one playing lead parts. And now that we have some context, let's get started with the actual tutorial. As a rhythm guitar player, it is really important to know a lot of chords, but even just knowing a few can be really useful. If you don't know any chords, don't worry, I made this simple sheet with a few essentials to get you started. I will include a PDF with tabs in the description and also MIDI files for those of you who don't play guitar but also want to get the same shapes on the piano roll. I purposely just use C and G as an example, but you can move these shapes around to get different chords and rearrange them to get different chord progressions. When it comes to chord progressions, I think it's best to not overthink it too much, but I know it can be a bit overwhelming when you're a beginner, so here are some commonly used ones. Once you get more comfortable with chord shapes and chord progressions, you can start experimenting with rhythm. I think that practicing 16-note patterns is a great way to improve your timing, so I transcribe a few exercises for you. The first one is just ghost notes, so no pitch at all, but I want you to focus on the rhythm only, and the rest are a few examples from songs that you might recognize. Remember to practice all of this with a metronome very slow and gradually increase the speed once you start to get more comfortable. Also, you don't have to constantly strum chords, you can also arpeggiate them, and this could be great to change the feel or the mood of a section. So hopefully now you have a better understanding on how to play rhythm guitars, and now let's take a look on how to write good lead guitar parts. First of all, learn the pentatonic scale, ideally all the positions all across the neck. This is probably the first scale that many guitarists learn, and there's a good reason for that. It's easy, sounds great, and is very useful. By the way, this is what it sounds like in case that you don't know. There's a really cool video about this by Cory Wong, one of my favorite guitarists of all time. He explains this very well, so I'm gonna add it to the description for those of you who are interested. You can also incorporate double stops, which basically means playing two notes at the same time. Here's an example of the pentatonic scale using double stops. Other common guitar techniques that you can use include bendings, harmonics, slides, and octaves. Now, you might not want your music to sound too pentatonic, so incorporating different scales such as major, harmonic, and melodic minor can truly benefit your compositions. And here are a few exercises to help you improve your lead guitar playing. Remember to start slow first and gradually increase the speed. Now let's take a second to discuss the tone. I personally really like the sound of single coil guitars, especially for that crunchy J-Rock tone, but you might prefer the sound of humbuckers, which is totally valid, and might work even better if you want to get a heavier sound. So it's really a matter of personal preferences. It's very difficult to try to break down all the amps and pedals used for J-Rock music, so instead I'm going to try to explain this in general terms based off what I've seen, so please take this all with a grain of salt. I noticed that a lot of practice room in Japan will either have a Fender Deluxe or a Fender Twin River amp, some type of Marshall JCM, and the Roland JC120. Of course, some others will prefer more boutique amps or different brands. I personally really like the sound of Vox amps. I haven't seen that many Japanese musicians use them, but I really don't care because I just love them a lot, so the best advice I can give is just go with what sounds best for you. This might sound creepy, but you can always stalk your favorite artists to see what pedals and amps they're using and try to recreate their sound. When it comes to pedals, it's always good to have a Tube Screamer, a Blues Driver, or an ST1, maybe an OCD. You can always try them at a shop or use plugins and see what sounds best to you. For this next example, I used the Morgan Amp Suite by Neural DSP. I believe it was the third amp, which is an SW50R. Here are the settings in case you want to copy them. And I also use a Boss GX100. I think it was a Vox type amp with a few overdrives in front, nothing too crazy, but here are the settings in case you want to see them. Hopefully now you have a better understanding of rhythm guitar, leads, and guitar tone. So now I'm going to play you a demo using all the concepts that I explained to you. So if you follow those tips, you should be able to make something like this. Of course, this could take hours, weeks, months, depending on your level and how much you practice, but all the core concepts are there and it's up to you to take it to the next level. Yay, so we finally reached the last section of the video where we're gonna apply everything that we learned so far using MIDI and VST instruments. In this case, it's gonna be Ample Guitar TC, but you can also use Stratus 3, either Stratus or Telos if you wanna get that single coil sound. For the guitar tone, I use the Neural DSP Morgan Amp Suite, the exact same presets that I showed you before. Let's talk about programming. I've seen a lot of people making the mistake of treating MIDI guitars like a synth or a piano, just drawing some random notes on the piano roll, but this can easily result in very awkward chord voicings that do not sound very realistic. Instead, every time you write or program MIDI guitars, try to include real guitar voicings. You can use the chords that I showed you earlier, or you can look up different voicings if you want to get more complex sounds. Another big tip is to always use the right fretboard positions. Guitar and basses can have the exact same note on different strings and they can sound drastically different. In order to get a more realistic sound, you can use the key switches, often included with the VST instruments or sample libraries to change hand positions. Looking at tabs can be useful for this, even if you don't know how to play, so you can match the fretboard position on your instrument. Okay, this might sound a bit obvious, but if you're trying to do guitar strums, make sure you're actually strumming the chords. In Ableton, you can do this very easily with the strum function. In Cubase, you can use the trim tool for this. Other DAWs might do this a bit different, but the result should be the same. Another good tip if you want the notes to ring out longer is to use the sustain pedal, which I think sounds better than just extending the notes. Now let's check out the demo that I showed you earlier, but this time all the instruments will be MIDI. course, it doesn't sound as good as real guitars, and I personally would probably never use it, but I can totally see this being useful in the context of a mix. And honestly, a lot of people might not even notice that it's MIDI or care. You can probably spend more time editing the MIDI and get way better results than me. Honestly, I just kinda wanted to do it fast and show that even without trying too hard, you can get decent results. So there you have it. If you made it this far, thank you so much. I know it can be a lot and it can be a bit overwhelming, but feel free to rewatch this as many times as you need. And of course, this can be a long process for some people. Remember that you're not supposed to achieve this in a single day, so take your time and try to enjoy the process. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video and want to see more content like this. I'll see you next time.